On New Year's Eve, 1985, a 23-year-old woman disappeared after celebrating with friends at a Florida bar. Hours later, her body was found on the side of the road, brutally beaten and abandoned like trash. The case shocked the small town of Pensacola, but despite the evidence, no arrests were made. The killer seemed to have disappeared without a trace. For 35 years, he lived free, thinking he would never be caught. But new technology would change everything. What did the police discover decades later? How did a simple cigarette thrown in the trash lead to the truth? And why, even with the killer's identity revealed, do many still feel that justice was not served? Today, you will learn the details of a case that shows how a single mistake can change everything, even after so much time. But before I tell you this story, make sure you are already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss the best true crime videos. It was the turn of the year 1984 into 1985 as fireworks exploded in the sky and thousands of people celebrated the beginning of a new cycle. Tanya McKinley smiled amid friends and family in a busy bar in Pensacola, Florida. At 23 years old, full of plans and with a young son at home, she seemed to have her whole life ahead of her. That night was supposed to be another happy memory, but it would become the last chapter in her story. Tanya was known for her charisma and for always being surrounded by people. A devoted mother, present daughter, and loyal friend, she radiated a joy that was contagious to everyone around her. So when she didn't return home that night, concern quickly spread among those who knew her. At 3 a.m., just hours after her last sighting, a woman was driving with her daughter along a poorly lit road when she saw what appeared to be a mannequin lying on the side of the road. The image, strangely out of place, bothered her. As she got closer, the truth froze her. The mannequin was, in fact, the lifeless body of Tanya McKinley. The brutality of the scene shocked even the most experienced investigators. Her dress lifted, her stockings pulled down, a bloody rag thrown nearby, obvious marks of sexual assault, and clear signs that she had been beaten and strangled. How could someone do this, and why? The pain spread like a shadow across the community. The fear grew, and for Tanya's family, a long, agonizing wait for answers was beginning, a wait that for 35 years seemed to have no end. But what exactly did the police find at that scene, and why, even with so many visible clues, was no one arrested at the time? On the evening of December 31st, 1984, Tanya McKinley went out to celebrate New Year's Eve at Daryl's Bar and Grill, a popular spot in Pensacola. Accompanied by her cousin and some friends, she was seen dancing, drinking, and having fun, in a celebratory mood like so many others that night. Witnesses report that she appeared happy, showing no signs of concern. But around 1:30 in the morning, Tanya disappeared. Hours later, at 3 a.m., the discovery of his body completely changed the course of that New Year's Eve. She was found in a secluded area on Peacock Drive, near a veterinary clinic. The place, deserted and silent, was not compatible with the environment where she was last seen. The strongest evidence was that she had been murdered elsewhere, and her body disposed of there. The scene was disturbing. Tanya's dress was up, and her stockings were down. Next to the body, forensics found a blue cloth with blood stains, as well as strands of human hair and dog hair. The autopsy confirmed what the police already suspected. Tanya had been beaten with a blunt object and then strangled. There were also consistent signs of sexual abuse. From the beginning, investigators faced obstacles. The first suspect was Tanya's ex-boyfriend, Tim, with whom she had a history of conflict, but the hair found at the scene did not match his. Another man who caught the police's attention was Kurt, a bartender who had been at the same bar that night. He did not have a solid alibi, but his blood type did not match the trace left at the crime scene. With no direct suspects, no witnesses, and forensic technology still quite limited, the case went cold. Tanya's family, immersed in grief, watched the years pass without any concrete answers. The cruelest thing of all was the impact on Tanya's son, who was only 18 months old when he lost his mother. To spare him the pain, he was raised believing that she had died in a car accident. For almost a decade, this was the only version of the story he knew, until, at the age of 14, he found a letter kept by his father. In it, the man asked a TV show for help in trying to solve the murder. The truth, finally revealed, fell like a bomb in the boy's life and rekindled the feeling of injustice that had long haunted the family. In 2015, with new genetic analysis techniques now available, the case was officially reopened. Investigators revisited the biological material collected in 1985, trying to extract something that could finally lead to a name. But, once again, traditional tests failed to point to anyone known. The frustration was repeated. It was as if the killer had been swallowed up by time. But, behind the scenes, a new hope was approaching. A still recent method was beginning to revolutionize the resolution of old cases: forensic genealogy, a technique that did not depend on criminals registered in databases, but rather on genetic links with distant relatives. And, in a few years, it would bring investigators closer to the truth than ever before. Who was Tanya's real killer, and how would science unravel a mystery that had been hidden for more than 3 decades? For decades, the investigation into Tanya McKinley's murder remained in a painful limbo. Detectives reviewed the physical evidence collected in 1985 over and over again: the bloody blue cloth, the strands of hair, the dog hair, the wounds on the victim's body, but nothing led to a definitive suspect. The lack of security cameras, digital records, or reliable DNA testing at the time made their work nearly impossible. The Pensacola community, which was initially shocked, watched the case fade into oblivion. Only the family and a few investigators continued to press for justice. With each birthday, with each New Year's Eve that passed, the absence was felt more keenly. Still, no arrest, no answers, only silence. In the 2000s, with the advancement of technology, experts were able to extract viable DNA from material collected at the crime scene. The genetic profile was entered into FBI databases, such as CODIS, but no criminal on record matched the identity. The killer remained in the shadows. Even as forensic science evolved, limitations persisted. DNA tests required a direct match to someone who had already been arrested or formally charged. If the killer had never been charged, his or her name would simply not appear. And that is exactly what happened. Tanya's DNA did not match any records, and once again, the case went cold. It was only in 2015 that a new line of investigation gained momentum. With the popularization of at-home genetic testing, such as those offered by companies like 23andMe and Ancestry DNA, a previously unthinkable possibility emerged: tracking down distant relatives of suspects through forensic genealogy. The idea was simple but revolutionary. If a killer had a relative who took a DNA test and made the data publicly available, they could be tracked down even if they had never been arrested. In 2018, with the help of Parabon Nanolabs, a company specializing in this type of analysis, the Pensacola Police Department decided to try this new approach. The genetic profile obtained from the crime scene was uploaded to open genealogy databases. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot left. Months passed before a partial genetic trace was detected. From there, a family tree was constructed based on remote connections, often to 4th or 5th cousins. The work was meticulous. Experts cross-referenced surnames, locations, and civil registration records in search of a common thread. That's how the name Daniel Leonard Wells came to light. At the time, he was 57 years old. He lived quietly in Florida and had never been arrested for any serious crime. He was not on anyone's radar, but his genetic profile perfectly matched the DNA collected from Tanya McKinley's body. The confirmation came indirectly. Agents placed him under surveillance and, at a certain point, managed to collect a cigarette he had discarded. The test was conclusive. The match was absolute. Now, with the name of the killer in hand, the police needed to confront him. Wells was arrested in March 2020. When questioned, he denied knowing Tanya. He said he had never been with her. But when confronted with the irrefutable DNA evidence, he changed his story. He claimed they had had consensual sex, and that, after an argument, she had collapsed. But the details of the scene, the condition of the body, and the brutality of the attacks completely contradicted this narrative. The authorities were convinced Daniel Wells had raped and murdered Tanya that New Year's Eve, and then, for 35 years, He lived as if nothing had happened, unpunished, free, invisible. But what could have driven him to take the life of a young woman who didn't even seem to know him? What was the real motivation behind such a brutal crime? And why, so soon after his arrest, did he make a decision that would prevent justice from being fully served? Daniel Wells' arrest in March 2020 seemed, at first glance, to be the outcome that the McKinley family had been waiting for more than 3 decades. Finally, after 35 years of agonizing wait, the name of Tanya's killer had been revealed. The police, the community, and the victims' loved ones believed that the case would finally have a trial, a formal accountability, a worthy closure to the pain they had carried for so long. But what came next was another blow, unexpected and cruel. During questioning, Wells initially gave a total denial. He said he did not know Tanya, had never seen her. However, when confronted with the definitive DNA evidence collected from a cigarette he had discarded and compared to genetic material preserved for decades, his defense changed. He then claimed that he had had consensual sex with Tanya that night and that a heated argument had ended tragically, a desperate attempt to soften the facts, pushing the narrative into a gray area between consent and fatality. But the details of the crime scene, carefully preserved since 1985, left no room for doubt. The condition of the body, the position of the clothes, the marks of physical violence, and the coroner's report pointed to a brutal attack. There were no signs of an accidental argument. There was, however, clear evidence of an intentional, violent, and cowardly assault. Even with the confession, Wells seemed not to accept the gravity of what he had done. The coldness of his words made it clear that for him, the crime was part of a conveniently buried past, a dark chapter that he believed he would never be forced to revisit. But justice was ready to act. Wells was formally charged with first-degree murder and rape. The trial would be the last step for the McKinley family to finally see the person responsible for Tanya's murder punished under the law. But just 2 weeks after his arrest, Daniel Wells was found dead in his cell at the Escambia County Jail. The official cause of death was suicide. With that, he escaped trial, public condemnation, and the burden of looking into the eyes of the people he had destroyed. The news devastated Tanya's family. After years of searching for answers, facing silence, uncertainty, and false hope, all that was left was a name and the absence of complete justice. There would be no court testimony, no questions answered, no opportunity to confront him. Wells took the details of that night with him, and in doing so, he left the wounds of those who survived open. Even so, the resolution of Tanya McKinley's case went down in history as a milestone. It was one of the first in the region solved using genetic genealogy, a technique that would soon prove fundamental in solving dozens of cold cases across the United States. And while Wells never faced a court of law, her identity revealed allowed a long-buried truth to come to light. For 35 years, the Tanya McKinley case symbolized the pain of uncertainty, a life brutally cut short, a family plunged into silence, a son raised with an incomplete truth. The name of the killer, long missing, finally came to light. But even that did not bring the relief he had hoped for. Daniel Wells escaped the weight of the law and the pain of being confronted with the lives he had destroyed. For many, that will never be full justice, but the truth, even if delayed, has power. Through the persistence of investigators, the courage of her family, and the advances in science, Tanya was no longer just another statistic. Her story was told, her memory was respected, and her death finally had closure. This case reminds us that time can erase traces, but it does not erase the need for answers. That technology can be the bridge between the past and justice, and that, no matter how distant it may seem, the truth always finds a way. If this story touched you, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with someone. Your attention helps keep the memory of victims like Tanya alive and push for justice, even if it takes a long time to arrive.